Finally, the Vice President and Democratic presidential candidate Kamala Harris has told it like it is. Donald Trump meets the criteria to be described as fascist.
It is clear from John Kelly's words that Donald Trump is someone who, I quote, certainly falls into the general definition of fascist, who in fact vowed to be a dictator on day one and vowed to use the military as his personal militia to carry out his personal and political vendettas. Donald Trump is increasingly unhinged and unstable.
Fascism is a far-right form of government in which most of the country's power is held by one ruler under a single party. Fascist governments are usually totalitarian and authoritarian. Common themes include nationalism, racial nationalism, religious nationalism, hierarchy, elitism, and militarism. Let's be clear, Donald Trump checks all of those boxes and a whole lot more.
And in a second term, people like John Kelly would not be there to be the guardrails against his propensities and his actions. Those who once tried to stop him from pursuing his worst impulses would no longer be there, and no longer be there to rein him in.
Let's talk about John Kelly, the retired Marine general who was Donald Trump's White House chief of staff, hand-selected by Donald Trump, who explained how the former president fits into the general definition of fascist, and that he spoke of the loyalty of Hitler's Nazi generals. John Kelly's comments 2 weeks from Election Day are the latest in a line of warnings from former Trump White House aides about how he views the presidency and would exercise absolute power if returned to office. In addition to the fascist comments, Kelly, who was Trump's chief of staff from 2017 through 2019, told the New York Times that the disgraced former president certainly prefers the dictator approach to government. He also confirmed that Trump had said that he wished his military personnel showed him the same deference Adolf Hitler's Nazi generals showed the German dictator during World War II, and recounted the moment.
He commented more than once that that Hitler did some good things too. And of course, if you know history, again, I think he's lacking in that. But if you know what Hitler was all about, it'd be pretty hard to make an argument that he did anything good.
What would he say when you would lay that out to him?
He'd just, that'd be the end of the conversation usually.
And on Thursday, Donald Trump outlined what could be his first major action if re-elected, firing the special counsel who has indicted him in 2 federal cases. Trump's remarks about dismissing Jack Smith were swiftly condemned by Vice President Kamala Harris's campaign, which reiterated their view that Trump is behaving as though he is above the law. Trump made his intentions clear during a call-in to the Hugh Hewitt show, where he was asked if he would fire Smith if he won the presidency. Trump responded, "We got immunity at the Supreme Court. It's so easy. I would fire him within 2 seconds. He'll be one of the first things addressed," adding that he also plans to sue Jack Smith.
You're either going to have to pardon yourself or you're going to have to fire Jack Smith. Which one will you do?
Oh, it's so easy. It's so easy. Like, he's a crooked person. He's a dishonest person. We had a brave, brilliant judge in Florida. She's a brilliant judge, by the way. We got immunity at the Supreme Court. It's so easy. I would fire him within 2 seconds.
The Harris campaign was quick to push back about Trump's comments, saying they align with the warnings of John Kelly, who cautioned that Trump is acting in a fascist manner. A second Donald Trump term where a more unstable and unhinged Trump has essentially no guardrails and is surrounded by loyalists who will enable his worst instincts is guaranteed to be more dangerous. America cannot risk a second Trump term. Now, although Trump would have the authority to direct the Attorney General to fire Jack Smith, the special counsel, the logistics of halting the investigations are actually more complex. According to long-standing Justice Department policy, a sitting president cannot be indicted or criminally prosecuted, as this could interfere with the executive branch's duties. Therefore, any federal prosecutions against Trump would likely be paused once he assumes office. The investigations, led by Smith, have been ongoing for nearly 2 years now. Smith was appointed by Attorney General Merrick Garland in November 2022 to examine Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 election and his alleged illegal possession of classified documents. Smith, who previously prosecuted war crimes at The Hague, has subpoenaed several of Trump's allies and family members, including Ivanka Trump and former Vice President Mike Pence. In June last year, Smith indicted Donald Trump on charges related to unlawfully retaining classified documents and obstructing efforts to retrieve them. Trump pleaded not guilty. Later, in August that year, Trump faced another indictment of 4 felony counts connected to his attempts to overturn the 2020 election. Think of it. The disgraced former president tried to overturn the 2020 election. Now, legal case or no legal case, we all watched him do it. It was broadcast on television, so there is no doubt as to his involvement. But unfortunately, in the legal system, both cases have faced delays, with Trump appealing various aspects, including his claim of immunity, which reached the Supreme Court, the court of which Donald Trump controls, with these far-right Christian nationalist Donald Trump-aligned justices who, of course, are protecting him at every juncture. I just want to interrupt myself for a moment to ask you to support me and independent journalism by becoming an exclusive member of this YouTube channel. You'll receive members-only content, early access to videos, monthly live-streamed Q&As, and much more. It costs just $3 a month for membership, which goes towards helping me grow the channel and create factual, accurate news commentary for those who need it most. Right now, the failures of corporate-owned media and the spread of disinformation and far-right propaganda has made finding authentic news coverage in the US difficult. And with your help, we can have a greater reach, whilst democracy hangs by a thread and the threat of fascism is closer than ever. I'll do my best to put this honest analysis out every day, but I really need your help to do that. If you're watching on a computer, simply click Join directly below or click the Join link in the description to join the 5 Minute News YouTube channel. If you already have a Patreon account, please subscribe at patreon.com/5minutenews. Thank you. In July, they ruled that Trump was entitled to immunity for actions taken while in office, sending the case back to the lower court to clarify which actions were outside the scope of his presidential duties. And then 2 weeks after the Supreme Court ruling, U.S. District Judge Eileen Cannon, a Trump appointee who now he's obsessed with, dismissed the classified documents case, ruling that Smith's appointment was unconstitutional as he wasn't appointed by the president or confirmed by Congress. Smith has since appealed that decision and filed new charges against Trump in the election-related case, arguing that Trump's actions were driven by personal interests rather than his official duties. Trump is also awaiting sentencing for his conviction on 34 felony counts of falsifying business records in New York. He faces a potential criminal trial in Georgia related to his efforts to overturn the 2020 election there. Remember, that was recorded as well. We literally have the recording of Trump on the phone to Brad Raffensperger asking for more votes than he got in Georgia. The evidence is there. It's an open and shut case. The problem is our legal system here just struggles to lock down someone as slippery as Donald Trump. And Trump's inclination to deploy US troops against American citizens is the latest scandal that just confirms the fascism and confirms the authoritarianism. During the tense period of social unrest following George Floyd's death, Trump asked military leaders, including General Mark Milley and then Secretary of Defense Mark Esper, if the army could shoot protesters. In his memoir, Mark Esper recalled Trump's volatile state of mind during that period and said Trump seemed unable to think straight and calmly. The protests and violence had him so enraged that he was willing to send in active duty forces to put down the protesters. Worse yet, he suggested we shoot them. Esper questioned Trump's understanding of history, propriety, and his oath to uphold the Constitution. Esper also shared an incident during an interview in 2022 where Trump, looking directly at General Mark Milley, asked, "Can't you just shoot them? Just shoot them in the legs or something." When military officials resisted Trump's desires, witnesses reported the president exploding in anger, shouting, "You are all effing losers." He agreed with the assessment by Trump's former White House Chief of Staff, John Kelly, that the former president meets the definition of a fascist. Trump often voices his admiration for authoritarian figures like China's Xi Jinping and Russia's Vladimir Putin. He literally idolizes these people. These people are guilty of extensive human rights atrocities, and yet Trump overlooks those things because he thinks that by befriending them, it puts him at a similar level of these dictators that he places on a pedestal. Recently, Trump has signaled that if re-elected, he would aim to govern with a similar authoritarian power. He even suggested that he would be a dictator for a day upon returning to the White House, and threatened to deploy the military against what he called radical left lunatics. John Bolton, whatever you think of him, one of Trump's former national security advisors, wrote in his memoir that both Putin and Xi Jinping would likely be thrilled to see Trump back in office. Military leaders have frequently condemned Trump's autocratic tendencies. At his retirement ceremony, General Milley remarked, "We don't take an oath to a king or a queen or to a tyrant or dictator, and we don't take an oath to a wannabe dictator. We take an oath to the Constitution, and we take an oath to the idea that is America, and that we're willing to die to protect it." Milley, in private conversations, has confided to several people that he believed Donald Trump to be a fascist.
We don't take an oath to a country. We don't take an oath to a tribe. We don't take an oath to a religion. We don't take an oath to a king or a queen or to a tyrant or a dictator. And we don't take an oath to a wannabe dictator. We don't take an oath to an individual. We take an oath to the Constitution, and we take an oath to the idea that is America, and we're willing to die to protect it.
The former Secretary of Defense, James Mattis, also voiced his alarm during the height of the Floyd protests. He wrote, "When I joined the military some 50 years ago, I swore an oath to support and defend the Constitution. Never did I dream that troops taking that same oath would be ordered under any circumstances to violate the constitutional rights of their fellow citizens." Many military leaders have been disturbed by Trump's desire to exact revenge on his domestic critics, and their concerns echo broader fears about how Trump might wield power in a second term. Kelly said that Trump never accepted the fact that he wasn't the most powerful man in the world, and by power, I mean an ability to do anything he wanted, any time he wanted. Whilst those in the cult of Trump might say that Trump is the answer to all their problems, those of us with a basic knowledge of history know not to trust any one person who claims to be the savior of the United States, let alone the world, especially if they're light on detail. If you care for democracy, you'll vote for Democrats. After all, they are the only party offering it this November.
So the bottom line is this. We know what Donald Trump wants. He wants unchecked power. The question in 13 days will be, what do the American people want? Thank you.
I'm Anthony Davis. You can find me on the 5 Minute News YouTube channel and podcast, on Wednesdays co-hosting Uncovered, and on Sunday on The Weekend Show with Midas Touch.